Hey, welcome to Gun Stuff. Today we get a chance to hang out and shoot the Swampfox blade. The Swampfox blade is a PRISM scope. What caught my attention initially is the fact that this named Swampfox. So I was like, well, what exactly does that mean? So I got online, checked out their website, and did a little research. And the name Swampfox comes from Francis Marion, who was a Revolutionary warfighter. He was considered the father of guerrilla warfare, and he was pretty much the inspiration for the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson. So he was going around fighting in the Revolutionary War, using all these guerrilla tactics against these big units and everything, and using all these small unit tactics. And a lot of people credit him with being the father of like modern day special forces, Green Berets, things like that. So that kind of caught my attention. And then in the other part of that is the motto of Swampfox is our mission is to make you a better warrior. So those kind of things, you know, this is a military owned or a veteran owned company, and me being a veteran myself, you know, it kind of resonates with me a little bit. So just want to give you a little brief history as to the name Swampfox, why they chose that name, and what it represents. So what we're looking at today is this is the blade. The blade is a prism scope. It's a 1-power prism, and what they've done here is a lot of 1-power prisms have been able to get down relatively close to 1 power, but there's always seems to be just a little bit of magnification there. This one here looks very, very close, probably the closest I've ever seen to having both eyes open and not having one eye focused differently. So it works out very well. This comes with a illuminated BRC reticle. It comes with it comes with a green and a red. The BRC is a Bullet Rise Compensating. Okay, so we'll get a little bit into that, but basically this compensates for bullet rise instead of bullet drop. All right, this has motion sensing, auto illumination. It turns off after 4 minutes. So after it sits for 4 minutes, it'll shut off, save battery. But then as soon as you shake it, wake it up, or anything like that, as soon as it moves, it turns on and goes back to the brightness setting that you left it at. It runs off one CR123 battery. I'm not exactly sure how many hours that is. I'm guessing it's still going to be in the 50,000 hour range or something like that. It comes with an auto reflective device, and basically it's the honeycomb little lens cover that goes over the top. And what that does is that knocks some of the ambient light off of the scope when you're looking through. So if you're running something like a big light, and this is like a home defense setup, you're running a big light, it blocks a lot of that ambient light coming in, flooding in from around the room, so it gives you a clear picture too. If you're hunting or anything like that with this, you don't get the emitter or the diode that shines on the front of the light, or if the amber color or green color, depending on what it is on the end here, that doesn't reflect back. So like animals or anything else that may see that stand out, this anti-reflective device covers that. Some of the things that I really like about this, I'm going to take these off real quick, is that this screws off. It comes with the anti-reflection device. It screws off, and then another little ring goes on there just for your scope caps. Comes with the caps, but then on your light on and off, it has these are convexed and domed on here, and concave, so that as you can feel these as you're trying to turn these on at night. So if you want it to go up, it's going to be the raise button. If you want the illumination to go down, it's going to be the concave button. So that will so that makes that just a little bit easier to navigate in the middle of the night. It has the tethered scope caps. It comes with a tool, comes with a cool little tool in the box that you can use to adjust all your scopes and remove batteries and things like that. But these are also tethered, and they have the little wrench on the top here, the little flat on here that will actually flip over and turn your dials. So it's really toolless, but it comes with a cool little keychain tool that you can use to do that. This is meant to be zeroed at 50 yards. and then that, of course, that will give you your 50-yard zero, and then of course the bullet will rise and then it'll come back down and it'll be at your 50 and your 200-yard zero. The click values on these is half minute, so you get a half minute at 50, half minute at 100, a half minute all the way out. So every click on this at, say, at like 100 yards is going to move you about a half inch. The height of this and the height, weight, specs, all that stuff is this is about 4 inches. Sits about 1.5 inches up for the inch and a half to 2 inches for the offset, for the bore offset. With the battery and everything, scope caps, everything included, this thing comes in at about 14 ounces, and the lens diameter is at 25 millimeters. So they have this. They also have a lot of other lines as well. But what we're going to get into today is we're going to get into the cool feature that what this is meant for. You can get these at the Swampfox Optics. They these are not for sale yet, so this is a pre-order item only right now. But getting into the meat and potatoes of what this is designed for, this is designed for bullet rise. Okay, so on our rifles, most of us, we all use these things. Any AR platform we use for self-defense or home defense or anything like that. Most of us are only going to use these things in close range. It's because it's the most prolific rifle platform in history. There's more in circulation than any other firearm in the world. So one of the things that a lot of us don't take into account is we zero these things at, say, 200 yards. But most of them are used in engagements or hunting much closer than 200 yards. So if we're using this for home defense, part of the problem that we run into is that as you are shooting this gun, this plane that where the reticle is, you're looking out, it comes out here, and then you have the center bore access is actually down here. So there's about a 2.5 inch difference here. All right, so if you are shooting in close, you have to compensate for that. Well, if you don't train for it on a regular basis, a lot of times that can be difficult. And what this is really meant to do is this is meant to bridge that gap. So what they've done is they've taken their Bullet Rise reticle here, and they've put it into action with these. So if at the top of the chevron, this is the reticle that comes on that comes in there. You have an arrow, a dot, and then you have your large MOA circle. Of course, you're using this up close. You can use this large MOA circle for just real quick snapshots, room clearing, stuff like that. For accuracy, you're going to be using the top of the arrow at anything for 50 out to 200 yards. The bottom of the arrow is where this thing starts to get interesting. So usually these are bullet drop compensators. And what they're doing is they've reconfigured this and they're reusing it for bullet rise. Okay, so when the bullet comes out of this gun out to 50 yards, this bullet is still climbing. Okay, so the bullet is climbing up to meet the reticle where you're looking straight at the target. So as this bullet's climbing, you have to compensate if you're shooting any closer than 50. Okay, so you're going to start to get low impacts. So what this does is it puts at the bottom of this arrow here, it puts this is 15 yards. So if you're shooting at 15 yards, instead of aiming at the center of the arrow, you're going to be using the bottom stick of the arrow. At 10 yards, you're going to be using the dot, and at 5 yards, you're going to be using the bottom of the circle. They refer to this as a carrot right here. So you're going to be using the top of this at 5 yards. So where that comes into play is if you're using this for home defense and you're trying to take a precision shot or if you're law enforcement or something like that and you're trying to take a precision shot and you are within 15, 20 yards, something like that, or even as close as up to 5 yards, you can accidentally shoot the hostage. You can shoot a loved one. There's a lot of different ways that you can miss with a firearm, and we as humans will find it. So what this is trying to compensate is for that height over bore. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a couple things on the range here just to demonstrate how the height over bore works and exactly how we can use this reticle. And one of the things I love most about PRISM scopes is that PRISM scopes have the ability to focus on here. Okay, so we have the ability to take this, and it has a focus ring. Red dots, we don't get red dots, holographics, stuff like that. We don't get a chance to do that. So where does that come into play for us? Is for people like me. I have astigmatism in my shooting eye, and I'm 46 years old, 47 years old. I can't remember right now. But as you get older, your eyes age, things like that. You develop these things, and some of us we've had them our whole lives. We've been wearing glasses, things like that. So you can take this and you can adjust this to compensate for that stigmatism, or if you're going to be shooting in the middle of the night, you can use this to focus to compensate for if you don't have your glasses on, depending on your prescription, of course. So that's one of the advantages that you get over a PRISM scope that we're using today versus a red dot. When I look through a red dot, all I see is a blur. The red dot gets washed out, and it distorts because of my astigmatism. So all I see is just a big blurry mess, like a blob, and a lot of times it kind of shunts down a little bit. So what this does is allows me to focus this so that I can see this clearly, so I can see my target clearly. And if we're going to be using this for the way it's intended up close, that's going to be great, because now I'm going to be able to see my target really well. Some of the other advantages that we get over a red dot when it comes to prisms is that we get a chance to have better reticle choices. When it comes to most red dots, you just get a dot. You might get a dot and a circle dot or something like that, but you don't really get a fine aiming point. Part of the reason that a lot of your prisms pick a chevron or a arrowhead is because that arrowhead gives you a finite point. It comes up to a very sharp point, and you can zero your scope for it to impact at the point of that chevron. So you have a very fine aiming point to use instead of a big dot that can possibly cover the entire target. So if you're shooting a 3 MOA dot or 2 MOA dot, and you have to sight in on something bigger than that MOA, then the dot takes up the whole thing and you can't see it. When you use a chevron or something like that, it allows you to put that fine point right on the target. And so that's what prisms offer, in the fact that you can pick, you have a much better reticle selection and a much versatile reticle selection. Most dots just going to give you dot, circle dot, and they give you very vague leads and or aiming points. One of the other things that I really like the most about prisms is the fact that this is an etched reticle, so this pattern is etched into the reticle, so that way if these batteries die, I don't lose my sight picture. I continue to have my same reticle, it just turns to black. Okay, so if I'm in low light, I could backlight the target, I could do a lot of different things to try and compensate, but I'm not completely done and I'm not out of the fight. Anytime, and especially if you're outside, it's just a black reticle. It's no different than something that we've been used to seeing for a long time using crosshairs or anything else. So if this dies, I don't, or if I can't, if I'm in a, like we're in the middle of a coronavirus lockdown right now, and if supplies are dwindling and my batteries run out and I can't find the proper batteries for this, I can just run without it. I can run this all day from now until infinity. It's not gonna affect. Only thing I'm just gonna lose is I'm not gonna be able to light this up green. One of the other things that I also like about this when using a big flashlight is I get a chance to you run this with a green, or you can get these in green or red. I prefer the green myself because it doesn't wash out as easily when you get into putting the bright lights into a home, and that's where I'll most likely be using something like this. So when I turn the flashlight on this and it lights up the whole room, I don't wash out as quickly as I do if I have a red dot. Red dots really seem to work well out in the woods, out in urban areas, things like that. Greens will kind of wash out a little bit against the background sometimes, especially like behind me. You can see there's a lot of green. We're in springtime, just now breaking into springtime here in northern Kentucky. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and set this thing up. We're going to go out, we're going to do a little demonstration, show you guys exactly how you use this reticle and what it's good for. All right, so here we are. So what we're going to do is we're setting up a bit of a visual demonstration for how this Bullet Rise reticle is going to work. So what the things that a lot of times we don't take into account is the height over bore. Okay, again, we're talking about height over bore. You have the reticle is right in the center of the scope here, and the barrel is down here. There's a difference of about this much. So, you know, it's like say 2.5 inches, depending on what setup you're running. It can be anywhere from 1.5 inches to 2.5 inches, depending on the scope setup that you're running. All right, so one of the things that we're looking at here is we're just pretending that the balloon behind our still target is the bad guy, and we want to, or whatever it is, we're hunting, you name it, home invader, whatever it is, the bottom line is we want to hit the blue balloon behind us. So if I'm taking my shot and I line up and my crosshairs right now would be on the blue balloon, but look where my muzzle is. My muzzle would actually be striking the innocent or hardcover or whatever we want to imagine that this is. In my mind, I'm kind of thinking about this as like a home defense situation. That's the bad guy and this is my kid, or something like that. So this is kind of what we're wanting to set up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a couple steps back and we're going to use this reticle and show it in action. First thing we're going to do is we're going to shoot. I'm going to aim at regular without compensation, and we'll see it, and we'll most likely see it hit the steel. And then I'm going to, on my follow-up shots, I'm going to use the reticle properly, and we'll see the impacts. And this is meant for close quarter stuff, so this is what we're going to use it for. All right. All right, going hot. So we're about 5 yards. So I'm going to fire the first round. All right. So as you can see, my crosshairs were on the blue balloon, and I actually hit the steel. Okay, so we can keep going back, but once we get back to 50 yards, the focal plane and the barrel will line up, and then they'll be hitting. So we go all the way back to where we zeroed at 50 yards. These two will match up because this bullet is coming out and it's climbing until it gets to that 50-yard mark where we zeroed it. So as of right now, I come into a room, I'm in a situation where I come around the corner, we've had a home invader, or I'm a police officer and this is a hostage situation or something like that, and I come around the corner and I come up and I fire and I see that threat, I take my shot, I don't hit the threat, I end up hitting the hostage. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and use the reticle properly. Come up, use the reticle, boom. All right, so just like that, coming up using the hold points that this thing is called for, I eliminate the threat, but I don't hit my unintended target. So we're going to run this drill a couple more times just to practice it. This is our first demonstration of it. We're going to run it a couple more times just to practice it and get a little more familiar with it to see just exactly how intuitive it is. All right. All right, so we've set up another scenario here. This is essentially the same thing, but some of the stuff that you may have to run into in a home defense situation is you're responding, you get your gun out of the closet, you get your gun out of the safe, or your police officer responding to an active shooter or something like that. You are in the middle of moving. So I come up here, I know there's a threat behind my hostage or my family member, which is represented by the black target. I know there's a threat behind there. So I'm going to use this reticle the way I would regularly use a reticle. I'm just going to go with aiming at the top of the chevron, and again, I'm most likely going to hit the hostage or the family member. So starting here, if I have to find the threat, I have to then get in position to where I can take a shot. So I'm going to move the shot. Now I can see the target. I choose the target, and I've shot, and I've hit the target again. All right, so I've hit the unintended target. So that's just using reticle properly. Okay, I've winged it or whatever. Now, if I was trying to shoot directly over the head, that would be a headshot or something like that. So now we're going to take a step back, and we're going to use the reticle the way it's intended. Moving, boom. I can see the shot. Okay, so I'm just moving just far enough to get rounds on target. But by using the reticle the way it's designed, now I'm able to successfully engage it without harming innocent bystanders. So we're going to reset that. On that funny thing also, on this last one, I had extra balloons, and they're off to the side over here. And when I fired that first shot, and I had that hiccup, and when I was talking, it popped all the balloons I had staged off to the side. So the splatter from the target splattered and popped all my extra balloons. So that's going to be the end of this demonstration for the day. But that also brings up another key point that I wanted to mention earlier, is that we're doing this demonstration under a controlled environment. And one of the things we want to think about also is when you're shooting still, of course we're shooting still, we're right on the ragged edge of being too close for still with the rounds that we're shooting. So it's one of those things we don't advise that you do this kind of up close shooting on still at home. But it's just for demonstration purposes, and so that way you guys can see it, and if we make a mistake, you'll see our mistake, and then you won't have to do the same thing at home. But I wouldn't get as close as we are on here. So, all right, so we're at about 15 yards right here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do some general speed shooting just to see the pickup on the reticle, and just to see how quickly I can maneuver back and forth between targets. All right, got a couple misses in there, but going back and forth really quick. Green reticle, like I said, kind of it doesn't really wash out, but it fades out just a little bit going back and forth between the green. If I was shooting the red, that would really stand out really well, especially against the white, and then also with it going back and forth between the two. So as you can see, all the green in between the targets, as I go back across, the green does fade out just a little bit. Just blending in with the background, but that's really not that big a deal. It's plenty bright enough, but just trying to go a little bit faster. I'll probably go a little bit faster if I was shooting red. So I'm going to keep on loading up, and we're just going to keep on shooting. All right, so we're going to move back up the hill. We're going to do some shooting on the VTAC boards. All right, so we're back up here at the top of the hill now. We got a couple targets down at 35 yards. We got some over at 50. I'm just going to run the VTAC board a couple times just to try and get the hang of this new optic and just see how it does. Right? All right, so got down there. It's part of the reason we run drills, part of the reason you want to get out here and get your reps in. As I'm going down, as I bring my finger up out of the trigger well, I accidentally engage this mag release because it's so big. It's right here. So it's one of the things that I would need to know so that I don't develop a training scar if I'm going to use this on a regular basis. Now I use a bunch of different rifles, so there's a very good chance that I'll continue to make this mistake with certain guns because the way I typically run is a different AR. So not necessarily having this big protected piece right here. So as you can see, there's not really much around this, so you can hit it really quickly. It's meant for speed, things like that. Not necessarily the greatest for getting into tight positions, but it's working great out here on the range. But it's one thing I need to make sure that I'm paying attention to, and you only find that out when you're out here doing this over and over and over. So we're going to keep going. All right, so here we are. We got another setup. So now we're going to do a little transition drill. We're going to start near the far. I'll start on the VTAC board. I'll go to the tank bunker, and then we'll go to a standing supported position. And we'll go out to further distances. We'll do 35, 50, 100, something like that. So we're just going to do some just transitioning with this, just for quick target acquisition drills. All right. All right, so one of the great things that I like about this is that this is real easy to pick up. And then on top of that, when you got the brightness at the highest setting, and with this thing being able to focus, where it really shined for me was on the last one. So I'm going out 100 yards on there, so on that last target. Being able to see a clear chevron for me is all the difference in making a hit and making a miss. If I was running a red dot on this with my astigmatism, it would just be that big blur, and I would be kind of guessing. I'd just be kind of do the best I could with it. But with this, at least I have something clear. So we love this thing, and we hope you do too. We'll see you next time on Gun Stuff.